Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I'm Kylee Griswold, managing editor at The Federalist. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have a brand new channel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts that is just for the Kylee Cast. So, to make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to go like and subscribe there. If you're only subscribed to the Federalist Radio Hour or You're Wrong with Molly Hemingway and David Harsani, two of our other wonderful Federalist podcasts, be sure to go over and like and subscribe to the Kylee Cast as well. And even better yet, if you're just listening to the show, go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. And then, of course, like and subscribe there too. As always, if you'd like to email the show, you can do so at radio@thefederalist.com. I would love to hear from you. Today, I am so honored to be welcoming to the show Walt Heyer. Walt Heyer has more life experience in his little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. Walt is in his 80s. He's just an incredible man, and he has a wild story to tell. Walt lived for 8 years as a woman before realizing the error of his ways, regretting his transgender identifying path, and reclaiming the God-given design, becoming a Christian, and living out his days as a man. Walt is incredible. I had such an awesome time talking to him, and I cannot wait for you to hear his story. You can find him at waltheyer.com. He's also written a number of books. He's spoken a number of times. Definitely go check him out. You can also read more of his work on thefederalist.com. But for now, please welcome to the Kylee Cast, Walt Heyer. All right, Walt, welcome. It is so good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I've been waiting for this for a long time, so this is a thrill for me.
You finally got the Federalist invite. It is truly an honor to have your first Federalist appearance be on the Kylee Cast. I'm thrilled to have you. So,
took me 10 years, after the first article I wrote, but what the heck.
That's way too long if you ask me. I don't know what happened there. I think we dropped the ball on that one. So,
I don't know.
We're honored to have you writing for us from time to time. So I hope we see another article from you again soon.
I'm
Walt, I
working
was
on
telling
one that's coming.
Awesome. I'll look forward to it. My inbox is open. So I was mentioning to you, Walt, before we started rolling here, that the first time I heard your story was actually when I was in college researching for a gender revolution project. And I came across your story, and that was a handful of years ago now, before the gender craze really took off and became quite the mess that it is today. But so it's really a privilege to get to sit down with you and talk face to face with you about your story. I never thought I'd get the chance to do that. So, and frankly, I mean, your story is long predates the gender craze that we find ourselves in today. So, I want to hear as much of your story as you're willing to tell today, and specifically your testimony. But why don't we just rewind all the way back to the very beginning? Can you just give me a sense of where you grew up, what your environment was like, what your family was like, if you have siblings, just kind of set the stage for the beginning of Walt's life?
Sure. I was born in 1940. So we're right now 85 years since that started. And then my dad was an industrial goods salesman. My mom was, she worked in a factory, a sewing factory. So they were both very busy. There wasn't a lot of money. We were pretty poor family, actually, at the time. We were growing up in the 40s. Of course, the war was on. My dad's father lived around the corner from us. He was a super guy, really nice guy. He at times would preach at church. He was a believer, and my dad kind of distanced himself from that. I think a lot of sons and daughters kind of, when their fathers does pastor work, they sort of separate themselves a little bit. So he didn't follow that real hard, but so it's a good family on that side. On my mom's side, they were really dirt poor, unbelievably poor family that my mom came out of, which was kind of contrasted with my dad's side. So my mom and dad got married. My mom was only 18 when they got married, had my brother, they got married in 38, had my brother in 39, and had me in 1940. So that's pretty quick go. And, but so I was being babysat by my mom's mother, who was a drinker, smoker, and quite robust woman. Actually, she was quite large, and she would, like the women back in those days, they did a lot of knitting, didn't they? I mean, that was kind of
Mhm,
a thing, knitting and sewing.
it's
And
coming
she
back
would,
around.
yeah, and so she was uh, would try to make clothing for people,
Mhm,
and try to make some money. And they think they called them bazaars, where people would get together and show their goods, and she would try to
mhm,
make some money doing that. Um, so the contrast was really kind of remarkable between my mom and dad's family. Um, so anyway, how it all got started for me, and I had a brother that was 18 months older than I was,
mhm,
still do. But what happened was a lot of babysitting. I was at my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, and her stepdad only had one leg, and he was a drinker. So it was kind of a unusual environment. My brother got to stay with my dad's dad, which was a whole different thing. It was a very nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 3-car
mm,
garage. It was kind of high end, versus I stayed in my grandmother's house and grandfather's house, which was behind a junkyard in Los Angeles, because we grew up in Los Angeles, a little town called Highland Park. And
okay.
so it was a rough, really rough. The house was kind of a ramshackled old place.
Mhm,
If you looked out the front door, all you saw was broken down cars that had been towed in from the junkyard. So my dad and mom would do a lot of fishing, and they would take off on the weekend. They'd drop my brother off at my dad's parents' house, and then drop me off at my mom's parents, and they'd take off for the weekend. And so my grandmother was making women's clothing. I'm 4 years old, 4 years old at this time. And I would just kind of lean on the sewing machine because there was nobody else around. I mean, it was
mhm,
desolate there. There were no kids. There was really nothing to play with. And she was uninterested in entertaining me. Not that she was even capable, but so I got interested in just watching her make clothing, and she decided, this day can't tell you how or why, but she decided to make me a full length evening dress, a purple chiffon dress. And so she made that for me, had me stand on this little cushion and made it for me, and told me how cute I looked in it, how wonderful I
mm,
looked in it. And so I think this is kind of the start of where the confusion came. And I think this is so instructive for us to talk about,
mhm,
because this is not gender dysphoria.
mhm,
And people will oftentimes migrate. Well, that's a trans kid or something. Well, in 1944 there were no words, right? We
mhm,
didn't know. Your grandma's just cross dressing a kid, and we
right.
don't know what that's about. And so, but what I really think it is when you take a young child and cross dress them like my grandma did me, it has this effect on me as, what's wrong with me? How
Mm,
come? How come grandma's only talking about how wonderful I am when I'm in a dress? So
mm,
this, you're planting these very contrasting seeds. So you begin as a child to want to be affirmed and liked and so forth. So you're going to migrate to wherever you're going to get the most feedback that's positive. And that feedback happened to be when I was wearing the purple dress.
right,
That's
right.
just what happened. And so that built within me this whole thing. And then remarkably, she said, "Don't tell your parents. This is our little secret." Well,
Mm,
what's a 4-year-old kid? Today I would know, if somebody said this is a secret, you'd automatically know there's something wrong,
mhm,
right? I
right.
mean, that's a big red flag right there.
Mhm, right.
What that means is your parents aren't going to approve of what I'm doing, and I shouldn't be doing it, but we're going to do it in secret.
Right.
So
Which
that's
sadly is a pattern now. I mean, that happens a lot in public schools and elsewhere. Just the secrecy. It's one of the hugest red flags I think about this whole movement.
That's why it's so important. I think that's why the Lord had me go through this, so that I could talk about this at 85 years old. I mean, this is 81 years ago,
Mhm,
and and
mhm,
and to be able to reflect on that, I think, is so instructive and even brilliant on the Lord's part, to have me be able to document that real life experience, which we're seeing with schools today. So we know, if you take a child and affirm them and do this to them before their brains are fully developed, which takes to 25 or 30. For me, it may take even longer than 85. Is still working on getting it there. But I think I believe they know that by cross-dressing kids at a young age, they can affect their long-term behavior. And so and my grandma didn't know that, but so I'm learning through this process. So anyway, 2.5 years of doing this at grandma's house, and I decided that I got so accustomed to that purple dress that I decided I was going to sneak the dress home, even though it was a secret. I put it in a brown paper bag, and when Dad picked me up, I took it home and put it in my bottom dresser drawer.
So this
Because
was a perpetual thing. This was happening every time you would go over there, or most of the times you would go over there?
100% time I was going over
Wow.
there. Yeah, for
Wow.
2.5 years. So you're building something there, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she never talked about the fact that, I like to wear cowboy boots, that I had blue jeans, that I was kind of a scruffy kid. I didn't ever see myself as being a feminine kid. I was small. But I liked bicycles. I liked sliding in the dirt. I was gruffy. I was
Mhm.
dirty all the time. So it was, what she was doing was kind of the opposite, I believe, of where I was. But it just shows you what you can do to a young child in
Mhm.
their early development by doing these things. So
Mhm.
I went on for 2.5 years, took the dress home, and thinking that I would wear it when I had a chance, when I could hide and do it, and then sort of feel what I was getting from grandma. Because in a typical household, um, in the 40s, parents aren't affirming their kids as a boy or a girl. It
Mhm.
was, you just grew up.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you weren't waiting for dad to go, "Oh, you're a really cool guy." That didn't
Right.
happen. So you had this grandma who was doing this, and dad was a great guy. But when my mom found that purple dress in my dresser drawer when she was putting clothes away, she pulls it out and she goes, "Like, where'd this come from?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Well, grandma made it."
Mhm.
Grandma made it. I mean, she was like shocked. And then my dad heard that, and that caused this huge explosion and major fight, screaming and
Mm.
yelling. And so what I realized then at
With
about
you or with your mother or with your
my
grandmother?
mom and dad going at it.
Okay.
Look what your mom's doing to my boy.
Mm.
What that kind of thing.
Sure.
And he's slamming doors and she's yelling. They're yelling. And here's the other thing that happened there. I I was told to keep a secret and I didn't. Right. I broke the
Mm.
secret. So now I'm feeling bad because I feel like I caused them to have this argument. Like now it's my fault. Right.
Right. A secret that you never should have had to keep in the first place, and now you're feeling shame for having shared it.
Yeah, because I didn't keep it, and now I'm seeing the
Right.
consequences, which I don't like looking at, of breaking the promise. So,
Right.
or the secret. So, as my dad then, 1946, he doesn't know what to do. Right? He's an auxiliary policeman for the Los Angeles Police Department. He's a
Mhm.
judo expert. He's a strong man. He's a man's man. He's fantastic guy. And he didn't know what to do. So he decided that any infraction or anything that I did at that time that required some discipline or he felt needed to be disciplined was done with a hardwood floor plank. And he would beat the crap out of me, be honest with
Oh.
you. Pardon me for saying that. But I mean, he'd left welts on my little butt at 6 years old.
Mhm.
So you got the cross dressing, then you got the hardwood floor plank. And then he had an adopted older brother, or actually he was a teenager, younger brother that was adopted, Uncle Fred. And because of the purple dress, Uncle Fred decided that I was fair game to be sexually molested when I was 8 and 9 years old.
Oh, I'm
So
so s
you see, uh, this is not particularly uncommon, by the way.
Mhm.
This is not this story, I believe, is so instructive for the Lord Jesus Christ to allow me to speak through it and to it this many years later, because this is happening every day in our country.
Right.
It's
Right.
happening every day in households. And we need to understand when we talk about these things, the damage that's being done, not just to the child, but to their long term development as a child. there's a term for it, and you've probably heard it before because I've written articles about it. It's called adverse childhood experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And adverse childhood experiences are the result of causes trauma, it causes PTSD, dissociative disorders, a group of things, obsessive compulsive. And all these things are sort of the underlying issues when you suffer trauma as a child. And that's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Grandma did psychological and emotional abuse by cross-dressing me. And I want people to hear that. When you
Mm-hmm.
cross-dress a child, you're doing psychological and emotional abuse. It's not just cross-dressing a kid.
Right. Right.
And then my dad did physical abuse, and then my uncle did sexual abuse. Now
Mm-hmm.
there's not too many abuses left in the box to
Mm-hmm.
lay on a kid before they're 9 years old.
That's the trifecta. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to work through all this stuff and I'm not doing real well with it. So I decided to be kind of humorous. That was the way I sort of buried my pain, was I was always trying to be a jokester and humorous. Although I found myself isolating from others because I felt awkward. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember a day, I don't know how old I was, but I remember one day I could not stop crying. I just could not stop crying. I was in so much pain. And my dad and mom were going to go to dinner, and they decided, I'm only like 9 years old at the time, maybe 10. They
Mm-hmm.
decided to leave me at home. Said, I don't want to bring this kid. They just left me at home. They went out to dinner and left me in the house by myself at 10 because I was crying. But you see, they didn't. And again, these are important things to consider. They didn't reach out and sit down with me and say, why are you in pain?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that,
Right.
wouldn't that have been nice? But
Right.
sometimes parents, as good as my dad was, good as my mom was, some things we miss. And I'm
Yeah.
sure I did that when I was raising my kids too. So I'm not saying I'm perfect. It's just something we can go through these processes and kind of instruct ourselves to have these little things we look for and make sure that we don't make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
instead of telling me to sit home and they take off and go to dinner, find out what's wrong.
Right.
And
Well, it's
and
so
so,
important for kids to have a safe adult to talk to about these things because whether it's, a child in a Christian home who doesn't feel that they can talk to their parents about same-sex attraction or a child who's struggling with their identity that doesn't talk to their parents, somebody's going to talk to them about it. So the question is, who is that person going to be? And it's really important that a child can talk to his or her parents about it so that it's not from the school counselor who says, "Okay, now let's keep this conversation a secret from your parents," for instance.
right. And so when I told him what Uncle Fred did about molesting me, that was another blow where they said, well, we asked Uncle Fred and Uncle Fred said he didn't do that. So you must be lying to us.
Oh.
So you start accumulating these things, and all of a sudden now, because I said that because you had mentioned a child needs a safe adult to talk to, right? I
Mhm.
can't talk to anybody
Right.
because they don't think I'm telling the truth.
Right.
Because
Right.
Uncle Fred said, no, yeah, he's lying. I didn't do that.
Right.
So, and I understand Uncle Fred wanted to protect himself. I get that. So anyway, by the time I'm 13 years old, I am really confused. There's no words like gender dysphoria, transgender,
Mhm.
any of that stuff. And so I took on a kind of a secret identity called Crystal West, probably in my early teens. Uh, and I would secretly go out in the backyard or places I could go cross dressed. Then when I knew my parents weren't going to be around, and if the car started coming in the driveway, I had a place I could go hide and undo the cross dressing. And so all these things were. What was the cross dressing about? Well, I was trying to recapture what Grandma was talking about this nice kid,
Mhm.
right? This how wonderful I was because that's what she talked. So I'm trying to find out how do I get to being wonderful?
Right.
And the only place that seemed to be was inside this with this dress over me.
So
And
even
so,
though you're not looking for outside affirmation or validation anymore when you're cross-dressing, that was the one time when you felt that I'm accepted, I'm praised, I'm liked this way. Is that what you mean? Is that what was going on
yeah,
psychologically or?
I think I've thought through that a million times, and
Mhm.
and and I can't say definitively exactly why I was doing it, whether it became an addiction or a habit, or an obsession, maybe more in line with what it was. Um, I in my mind, I think, well, maybe I was just trying to recapture hearing what grandma was saying. If I put on the dress, I could then replay in my head how cute I was, or how nice I was, or how wonderful I
Mhm.
was,
Mhm.
because I was in pain.
Mhm.
When you're in pain, you want people to tell you how wonderful you are as an effort to try to get out of the pain. But so
Mhm.
I'm cross dressing at 13 and taking on a name, Crystal West. I'm telling one or two real close friends that I have about what I'm dealing with, and finding that in the 50s that's not a safe thing to do, because they would immediately abandon me and kind of
Mhm.
shun me. And I
Mhm.
understood that
Mhm.
later on. But then there was this thing. Christine Jorgensen hit the headlines. Was a Marine soldier, I forget which branch of the service, that they called, went through the surgery and became a transsexual. That was the first terminology that was
Ah,
done.
okay.
And so they called it a transsexual. And the surgery apparently was done in somewhere in Europe, Germany or somewhere. I'm not even sure.
And when you
But
first heard this term, was it an immediate, "Oh, that's what I am or want to be," or did
yeah,
it just
yeah.
finally give language to how you were feeling, or what
Yeah,
exactly?
yeah, it did all of those things. It gave
Okay.
language to it. It said that must be what I am,
Mhm.
and see. Here's the thing: I can say it today, but I could say that must be what I am without being able to process the fact that I've been abused.
Mm.
See,
Mhm.
this whole thing was about abuse. I was trying to
Right.
escape abuse,
Right.
and
Right.
I can tell you definitively, I never really wanted to be a woman. That was never what it was about.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
just did not want to be in pain.
Mhm.
How do I
Right.
escape pain? I spent my life trying to escape pain,
Right.
and I did it in numerous ways. Cross dressing was supposedly one of the relief things, and so I took on that identity. I kept that secret. I had a girlfriend. I never had same sex attraction. I was never had the homosexual part. I don't even know what
Okay.
that's about.
Okay.
And 90%, frankly, more than 90% of the thousands of people I've worked with were not homosexual or had same
Okay.
sex attraction. So
Okay.
it's usually what I've found, like with me, it's usually a broken identity.
Mhm.
And in helping somebody, you need to find out how it got broken, what
Mhm.
caused it to be broken, what caused you
Mhm.
to not like who you are, is
Right.
is is the message that I always work with. So
Right.
so I
So
went
this
on.
girlfriend, uh did you share any of this with the girlfriend at the time, or was it all very private and secret
Yeah,
still?
it was private for a while until I started building trust with her, and her name was Lola Joy Phipps. She was a redhead, amazing, sharp gal. And so I finally had the nerve to tell her, and she was so wiped out about me telling her. I realized I could never tell anybody ever again,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
it destroyed her, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
And so these events that you have really shape how you go through life, who you can talk to, and what you do, and
Right.
how you live, and what your secrets are,
Right.
and and so they shape all the pathways you take, and many
Right.
times the pathways are unhealthy, and they're destructive. And
Mhm.
so anyway, I went on through that, and had a few more girlfriends, but nothing real serious. And then in
And since you said you didn't actually uh think that you were a woman or necessarily even wanted to be a woman, um or maybe that's not how you would characterize it, but there was no feeling of like resentment or jealousy about these girlfriends and the lives they were living, right? Because it wasn't
no,
ultimately a sex thing, it was just an identity thing.
it
You
was
didn't want to be Walt.
yeah. I didn't want to be the guy who was cross dressed by grandma,
Mhm. Mhm.
beat up by my dad, and
Mhm.
sexually abused by my uncle. I did not want to be
Right.
that guy.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I didn't have too many other choices on where I could go with that, right?
Mhm. Right.
Um, and so, um,
And
so
can
then
we
I
back up just a second? Was
sure.
your experience with your grandmother, is are those your earliest memories? Do you remember childhood before being cross-dressed?
I do.
Okay.
I had an event before that, with my mother, when I was probably two and a half, and I wasn't sure about what this was, and it was probably only 8 or 10 years ago that I found out that my memory was true about it. But I
Okay.
knew something when I was maybe 2 or 2.5, 3 years old with my mother happened, and it was a very painful thing, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And we finally had a chance to talk about it. My mom admitted to me just before she passed away that when I was 2, 3 years old, somewhere in there, that she almost killed me from shaking me so hard because she was so angry at me.
Oh my goodness. Like she tried to kill you or she accidentally almost did?
She accidentally almost did it by just shaking the daylights out of me, and I do have a vague memory of that. And um, yeah, she remembered it, brought it back, and we talked about it when a lady, I think in Minnesota or somewhere, was convicted of shaking a baby to death.
Yes. Yep.
And she, that was probably, I don't know how many years ago it was. She said that could have been me, you know.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
um, and I had some recollection, but when you don't have all the pieces, your
Mhm.
brain at 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old brain to put all the pieces together.
Right.
I never confronted her about it, but she finally confessed it to me and to my wife,
Mhm.
my current wife. And
Oh, wow.
so, and so she said, "Yeah, I almost killed you," and I was devastated, that.
Mhm.
Um, and here's the thing. This was the one thing too that I realized about my mom. She never, and she lived to be 86 years old, never said she loved me.
Wow.
Never.
Not
But
even late in life, like, as she's confessing these things to you?
no, she was so upset with all the things I went through, my struggles,
Ugh.
that she only saw that as her big burden. Not she, my life gave her a big burden. That's the way she
Mm.
saw it. I ruined her life basically.
Wow.
So, um, but she really cared for my brother who was older. And so I know I was trying in the best way. I think there's also the element of me trying, maybe if I was a girl, maybe mom would like me.
Mm. Sure,
So I
sure.
think
And
yeah,
oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask, was there an element of that with your grandmother? I mean, you probably can't psychoanalyze your grandmother or her
yeah.
intentions, but do you know why the repeated cross-dressing and all of this, "You're so wonderful, you're so cute," with the dress? Like, was there a sexual component to that? Was there a wishing for a
No,
girl component? Like, do you know if there was like,
yeah,
why?
there might have been. Yeah, I don't have the why. She was a
Okay,
drinker. She
okay,
wasn't. She was um, not bright.
okay.
She was raised in the Dust Bowl and all that stuff. She had a terrible life. Her
Mm,
first husband divorced her. Her second husband only had one leg. I mean, they lived in a trailer park.
mhm.
Yeah, it was low go. So I don't know where she
Rough.
came up with this, and I don't know if she was trying to um, make me into a girl or whatever. But
Mhm,
the damage um, lasts a lifetime.
mhm.
Isn't that amazing? It lasts a lifetime. Yeah,
Yes.
you can get healed through the power and grace of Jesus Christ and move on with your life, but there's
Mhm.
still
Amen.
battle scars,
Mhm.
So,
Right, right.
yeah,
And then how long did the abuse with your uncle last? Was that
I,
very prolonged, or was it a one episode type of thing, or
it lasted for probably a year or so,
Oh,
not
okay,
frequently, but
okay.
it lasted for a while. But I
And
think
there was
what
no adult that believed you?
no, no, and even when I told my older brother, when we're both in our 20s, he said, "No, that never happened. You're making that up." Because
Oh,
dad told me you made it up. So, okay, so I had
just
no place to go.
heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it just made things a little bit more challenging. It didn't make them impossible. It just meant that
Mhm,
I had to build the one word that I really love. I had to build resilience.
mhm.
That's the
Yeah,
word that kept me going. Resilience.
mhm,
And you just keep, if you don't have resilience, man, you're gonna crash. I didn't have the best. I've got it now, but it took
mhm.
me a while to build that resilience. So,
You
I went
certainly
on
do.
and then I was identifying as some other female, probably in my teens, and I was actually going to. I had a car then. I would go to these dress up balls they had. They would have Queen for a Day, which is a guy dressing up, and they were pretty big in LA. They had, a few hundred people in a theater, and they'd have these people, probably more not, I really couldn't associate them with, because I think they were more drag like.
Okay.
And I think the drag group was homosexual. I wasn't.
Mhm.
I never partnered with any of them. I never got to be friends with any of them. I was an observer
Mhm.
and watched this happening, and I found it interesting, but I couldn't put the pieces together for me. Why am
Mhm.
I drawn to that? Why am I going that they're doing the same thing I am, and what are they about? What are they doing? So and then and I was going to church. I was really trying to find a relationship with Christ through this, and
How old were you at the time?
well, I'm 19 by this time,
Okay.
20, and I started. I was very interested in aerospace, and I started working in the aerospace industry and
Okay.
worked on. I eventually became an associate design engineer on the Apollo Space Missions 1, and I
Oh,
worked
wow.
for North American Aviation. I worked on the area of cryogenics. I helped develop cryogenic connectors that could withstand the 352-degree below zero temperature in the tanks. And so I was making really good money. I was, I was wearing these $125 shoes and $70 slacks and $30 ties when I'm in my 20s,
Mhm. Right.
you know.
And are you living with or near your parents at this point, or when did you, break away from there?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, my dad passed away from cancer when I was 20,
Oh,
which
sorry to hear that.
was, yeah, and I was at his bedside. Um, and the story behind that was he got cancer. And in those days, they just sent people home, and
Mm,
he had lung cancer. And so I was actually working during the daytime, and going to my mom's house. We'd take shifts where she would be up all night caring for him, because he
okay.
had to have morphine, and he was in these braces. He was just really sick. And then I would go to work and come back and work, stay up with him all night. So we'd just trade these things. And at the end of a month, I'm working at this aerospace industry on the Apollo space missions, and my boss, I can still remember his name, Katsumi Wakamatsu. So Katz,
Okay.
if you're out there, baby, he was a cool guy. So I was driving 40 miles to work because of my mom needing me at home where dad was, and it was a long ways
Right.
from home. So 40 miles each way was pretty intense. And so I went to work one day, and the boss, he says, come into the office. And I said, what's up? He said, I want to talk to you. So he said, you're usually really high energy. You're usually really on the ball, but there's something not going right. What's up? And then I told him about my dad and about taking care of him because he's sick. I'm up all night, and so I'm up for many hours. If
Mhm.
you're up a whole day and a night, and then going to
Right.
work the next
Right.
day. And so he said, go get your time card. I actually thought he was going to fire me. And so I
Mhm.
went and got my time card, and he held the time card. He says, you go take care of your dad. I will fill your time card in every day. You don't have to worry about money. You just worry
Wow.
about your dad.
Wow.
And that was what an impression that made. I mean, I wept all the way home.
Yeah.
So,
Was that
so
I mean, maybe this is reading too much into it, but was that one of the first expressions of real love and care that you had received in your life? Or I mean,
that that was
yeah.
powerful. I mean, and to actuate that point. I missed the word, but anyway, yes, because look what I can remember it today and talk about it today,
Mhm.
like it happened today, because that
Mhm.
was nobody else has ever done anything like that
Mhm.
in my life.
Mhm.
Oh, that was powerful. Just go
Mhm.
home. When you come back, you're good.
Yep.
And so,
So sacrificial and giving and yeah, just love and
yeah,
action in a way that you hadn't seen, I'm sure.
man, that was something. So, and dad did pass, and then I went back to work, and then I went to work at a different facility with a different boss, and I grew through the ranks. I was there for 5 years working on um, electronic things, and had a great job.
Mhm.
But here's where the things started to go a little haywire. Um, I couldn't get the abuses. I couldn't handle them. they were affecting me, and I started
Mhm.
drinking.
Okay.
People, you go after work, you're in your 20s, and you people you work with, come on over and have a drink, come on over
Mhm.
and have a drink, do this and that. So I was drinking way too much, and I was having wrecks. I hit things, wrecked cars. I was having a bad time,
Wow.
because I didn't know where could I go with this bucket of pain that I had from my
Mhm.
childhood. Here
Mhm.
I am at this level as a youngster working in an environment where I can really be successful, but I
Mhm.
have this big, huge baggage that
Mhm.
I don't know what to do with, and I don't even want
Right.
to frankly talk about with anybody.
Right.
And
And what
so,
did that look like? I mean, day to day, hour to hour, was it something that you just thought about constantly? Is it something that work distracted you from? Like, what did that look like in practice? What were you thinking and feeling, while you were at work and while you were driving and, while you were
yeah,
drinking? Like, yeah, what was your
well,
thought process like?
I'd get to work. I was super responsible, always on time, never late,
Mhm.
no matter what. Always did fantastic work. I was dedicated to I was a perfectionist. After I got off work, I started drinking on the way home. And so I was married at the time, um, having children. I had two children. I was
Okay.
becoming very, very irresponsible. And I, I was really not liking who I was. I really,
Mhm.
I didn't like who I was. It's bad enough I didn't like who I was as a kid. Now I've
Mhm.
got this duality in life where uh, I'm I'm continuing to cross dress secretly throughout my
Okay.
life. So these I would go sneak off to a hotel and do this. So
Wow.
I spent my entire life from the first time Grandma cross dressed me, my entire life struggling with this whole um, identity thing and who was
Mhm.
I. And
Mhm.
so as I went on, and eventually I started doing cocaine. Uh, uh, you know, uh, I got divorced. I ended up having the surgery. I went to a therapist and told him, Dr. Paul Walker in San Francisco. Dr. Paul Walker is no lightweight. He actually wrote the original WPATH standards of care.
Oh, wow.
He drafted them. When he
Yeah.
first drafted them, they were called the Harry Benjamin International Standards of Care. And he was the
Okay.
caretaker of those standards that became WPATH in the 90s. And he massaged those standards all through that. He diagnosed me in 1981 when I went to his office because I was making money, and they said, "Oh, this guy's the big
Right.
kahuna. This is the guy you need to go to." I went there. I was intoxicated when I showed up in his office. I'm dressed up as a female, and I don't even remember. I think I had Lola. I don't know what name I was even using then. And
Okay.
the first session, he diagnosed me with gender dysphoria, and he says, "Come back next week, and I'll have a letter of approval for surgery."
Wow. Never asked about your past, never asked
I
about your
told him
mental
about my
state?
past. I
Okay.
told him everything I've told you. I told him, and he said it doesn't
Wow.
matter.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so,
Let's rewind for just a second. So,
yeah,
let's go back to how did you meet your first wife, and what did that look like? Did she know anything about your struggles, about your cross-dressing? How much did she know about your past and about
yeah.
the pain that you were
Well, what
dealing with?
I met her at the time I was driving. I was going back and forth to work and helping my mom in
Mhm.
LA. And so I
Okay.
went to a church
When your
that I
dad
went
was sick?
when my dad was sick. So
Okay.
I would take the opportunity to go to church on Sunday night. It was a young person's group, and I was with my friend Steve. And I told Steve when Sue walked across the floor, I said, "I'm going to marry her." He said, "Well, you are a nut. You can't do that." So it was after church. I said, "Would you like to go for some ice cream?" And so she said, "Yeah." So I took her to ice cream, and we built a relationship. Her her dad was very wealthy,
Okay.
executive at Disney Studios,
Wow.
and so we built a relationship. And I was, she knew the struggle I was having with my dad, and I think that was, um, she felt that she wanted to comfort me, um,
Okay.
and she knew that. I was traveling back and forth. But we ended up getting married in 1961, and we were married for about 15 years.
Wow.
But during those 15 years was the most tumultuous,
Mm,
oh my gosh, bless her heart. She's a believer. We went to church, but I was absolute tragic mess
mm,
because there really was nothing and no one that anyone knew what to do with people who
mhm,
struggled with this stuff.
mhm.
Um,
So she
and I,
knew you were struggling with these things.
yes, I
Okay.
told her, right off the bat, and she
Mhm,
said, "Well, we'll work through this."
mhm,
Uh, and I was pretty confident I could work through it. I thought, well,
mhm,
if I had a good job, it would go away. If I had kids, it would go away. If I
mm.
got married, it would go away.
Yeah,
Uh,
all these things would fix it.
Everything would fix it, right? And if I just,
Mhm.
had two parking places, two cars, and I was a big shot at work, that would fix it. Nothing fixed
Yeah,
it. And
right.
so they, when I then was approved for surgery, when I told her, about the fact that I was going to have the surgery, and of course that ended our marriage, as it
Oh.
should. And
Mhm,
so my daughter then at the time was in her teens, and she didn't speak to me for 8 years. And that rightfully, I totally supported her not speaking to me for 8 years. I think she did the right thing.
which
And
was the duration of you living as a woman, which we know you can't actually change your sex, but,
right,
um, okay, that was the duration of
yes.
that, okay.
So she was waiting for me to find my way back. So, and my son, he took it a little different because he would just say, when I was having these struggles, yeah, I know this thing about what's on the outside, but I know who you are on the inside. Kind of
Mm.
the brightest bulb in the chandelier, really, when you
Okay.
think about it.
Mhm. And how
But
old was he at the time?
I think he was about 12.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so the truth is, I struggled for 46 years with cross-dressing, transgender, whatever you want to call it. I don't call it transgenderism. There's no such thing. That's one
Right.
of the things that pains me so deeply. There is
Mhm,
no such thing as a transgender. I was never a
mhm,
transgender. I never detransitioned.
mm,
There's no transitioning. All these words are the thing that probably pain the most. Is that when I read an article that says, a trans runner, there is no such thing as a trans runner. It's
mhm,
a guy identifying as a female. I don't know
mhm.
why we can't write this way. You know,
Yep.
we we're we're doing such a disservice to the whole nation by
Mhm.
calling these people trans. And
Well,
as
it
you
works
point,
to the benefit of the industry. It's all euphemism. It's all,
thank you.
yeah, it's all propaganda. It's language manipulation intended to achieve this desired outcome. What kind of language do you suggest that people use? Give them some
Yeah,
tools to put in their toolbox to refer to some of these
yeah.
things.
Well, I say you're struggling with your identity. It's an
Mhm,
identity issue. It's not
mhm,
even about gender. I haven't even, as you know, I've worked with thousands of people.
mhm,
I haven't found one of them that had gender dysphoria, even though
mhm,
they were all diagnosed with gender dysphoria. When you spend time with them and get to what caused them to not like who they are
mhm,
and deal with the underlying issue, it's never about gender. It's not even a gender issue.
mhm.
It's all kinds of other issues.
Right.
And I've written many articles in the Federalist about that. And in fact, that's a good segue. This
Yes, I
book,
was gonna ask you about your new book. This is also a good reminder for anyone who is just listening to the podcast. It would be a great time to go over to YouTube or Rumble and watch this episode there so you can see the full video version of my conversation with Walt and see his book that he just flashed on the screen, Embracing God's Design. Can you tell us about that, Walt?
yeah, and this book is really I wrote it with Dr. Jennifer Bowens, who is a trauma therapist, because I suffered trauma,
Mhm,
and I want people to understand that you don't have gender dysphoria. You've been suffering from adverse childhood experiences, or
mhm,
you got addicted on the internet, or it was a social contagion.
mhm,
And these social contagions are just as powerful. I've had teachers tell me that they have students that have come to them and confessed, I'm afraid to not identify as a transgender or I will be bullied. It's just the
Mm.
opposite of what people think. You know, I'm
Yep.
being bullied because I'm a transgender. No, you're being bullied because you're not. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of things to unpack in this. So the language I use is when somebody writes me, and I actually have fun doing this, and they write me and they say, well, I'm transgender, I transition, I have gender dysphoria. And I have a gender therapist. So I write them back and say, well, your gender therapist is a quack. You're not a transgender. You've never transitioned. And if you work with me, I bet you'll find out you never had gender dysphoria. And
Mhm.
so we open the door up. And what's interesting is in working with the people that I've worked with who reach out to me, um, when they find out that they're not, when I don't address them as transgender, that's a relief to them.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
don't use their pronouns. You know,
Mhm.
it is on any level. You can't biologically change anybody.
Yep.
You can't medically change anybody's gender. You can't say, I don't care what you do. All you can do is cosmetic work. And
Mhm.
in this book, um, Embracing God's Design is a document by the surgeon who did my surgery and undersigned by Dr. Walker, who wrote the standards of care, where they say you cannot change, get this, the word intermorphology. What is that? That's what you're made of.
Mm.
You can't change who you are. That was a
Mhm.
clever way for them to dodge saying you can't change your gender. They just used intermorphology
Okay.
to cover themselves, give themselves cover for doing the surgery because they were still
Mhm.
in business. It's the
Right.
the hormones themselves are over a $4 billion business. It's probably
Right.
4.4 billion. I don't know what it is today, but so it's a money game. And
Mhm.
the people who advocate for this, if we look at them, they're the same people who tear down statues. They're the same
Mhm.
people who kill babies in the womb. They destroy things. The only
Mhm.
thing this is my line on transgenderism, it only devalues, dehumanizes, and
Mhm.
destroys everybody it touches.
Mhm.
Devalue, dehumanize, destroy.
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
under God's design, you have purpose. As
Mhm.
a identifying as a transgender, believe me, there's no purpose there.
Mhm.
God
Right.
gives you a purpose. You can no longer, when you have all these surgeries, become a father or bear a
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
They're destroying things. This is, to me, this is, I'm 85. I know I don't have a ton of years left. The sand is coming out of this. And for me, the most important thing is for people to stop this absolute insane nonsense of calling people transgender. There are
Mhm.
none.
Mhm.
They're cross dressers or they're struggling with their identity. And so
Mhm.
they're strictly, I've called it, even in the Federalist, I think I had one where I called it folklore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's
Right.
phony. I've tried to, the truth is, I've tried to come up with every way to help people identify this in such a different way. Why I just don't get why we continue saying they transition. I don't even like detransition. I get really upset. Well, you're a detransition. No, I'm not.
Mhm.
I never transitioned. They
Right.
cut body parts off. I was on hormones for 12 years. I was an idiot,
I was
for
mutilated
listening.
and I regret it.
Yes. And
Right.
so
Right.
um, I just hope and pray that we can start using the language and be more instructive to people to stop calling people transgender. I say transgender identifying person.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Um,
That's the
you
kind of
can,
language we use at the Federalist too. We're very careful. We even try to use sex instead of gender wherever we
right.
can, because sex is your physical embodiment. Like things are gendered. Language has a gender, but human beings have an embodiment. They have a physical biological sex, and it goes all the way down to your chromosomes. I mean, this is not even just determined by your genitalia, and it's certainly not something that's assigned at birth. It's something that is inherent to who you are, and especially as Christians, we know we're not just a physical body either. It's body, soul, spirit, mind. It's all of these things. And they're
Yeah.
not disconnected. You cannot just change your body and therefore change change who you are at your core. And it's such a lie. And I love that you said, how freeing it is for people to actually hear you say you are not transgender, or to correct, these patterns of language manipulation, because you cannot be freed of these things unless you're willing to tell the truth about them. And I think it's such a
Yeah.
lie that it's a kindness to use people's preferred pronouns, for instance. And I mean, we know as Christians that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and powers and the enemy, meaning the devil.
Yeah.
And when we engage in these kind of language games, we're believing the lies of the enemy, that truth is malleable, that human beings are that God makes mistakes, that I mean, there's so many lies wrapped up in this that we just fall for hook, line, and sinker by letting trans ideologues define what is kind and good and true and beautiful. And it's
Yeah,
false.
and when you think about it, when I've said this a million times, my wife's heard me. Oh well, just stay quiet. You said that a million times. I'm going to say it again. Is a woman nothing more than a man full of hormones with his genitals cut off?
Are you asking me, is a woman that?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Absolutely not.
that's my point. And so this is what they're trying to push on society, and they've successfully done so for a long time. And we could get into the fact that there's other factors involved here, like autogynephilia, that nobody talks about, which is a huge issue. And Leah Thomas had gone public with being autogynephilia. Well, if you identify as autogynephilia, you're not transgender. Sorry, that's a sexual fetish disorder. Let's get honest about it. You have a sexual fetish, come clean.
Right. Can you explain what autogynephilia is for people who maybe haven't heard that term before?
Yeah, when a man dresses up in feminine clothing and looks in the mirror, he sees the object of his affection. This is what brings him to sexual arousal. So it's a sexual fetish disorder. And for transvestic fetish disorder, it's a piece of clothing, shoes, other objects. And so these are mental disorders. These are absolute disorders. And to give them the title of transgender and give them some special place in society just absolutely infuriates me. And so, this whole thing about honesty, I love the fact that what the Federalist does. That's why I've stayed with them for so long. And so I'm really trying to finish out my life getting this language right and getting everybody who writes and publishes articles to stop talking about trans people. Parents say, I've got a trans kid. You don't have a trans kid. You got a kid who somebody's told was trans. I was a kid at 4 years old. I know what happens, and it isn't good.
Right.
And so, I think telling somebody they're trans, while it may make them feel good, is also abusive. Or using their pronouns does not honor and glorify Jesus, because that's the place where my dividing point comes. I don't want to say anything that doesn't honor and glorify Jesus. So sorry, buddy. Somebody just wrote me yesterday and says, talk to her. She just, I said, well, when Mr. White wants to talk to me, he can write me and I'll talk to him about it. But I don't play those games. And I think there's someplace we have to start. And for me, the most beautiful part was when I got sober and I started going to AA. I spent a lot of time. I went into a women's recovery center. I was still struggling, and I started going to church as Laura, and I started going to the church when I talked to the senior pastor there, Jeff Farrar. I told him, I'm struggling with this stuff. I had this childhood, and he says, well, we have a PhD Christian therapist here that I'll talk to him and see if he wants to talk to you. So Dr. Arnold in San Mateo, California, he just kind of gave himself to me in terms, he said, here's my phone number, call me anytime, I'll meet with you anytime, never charge me a dime. He said, I'm really interested in just learning your struggle. And so we didn't have a formal weekly thing. We just had from time to time getting together. But in that process, and then going through AA, and getting 4 or 5 years of recovery by 1990, I just written a poem in 1989 that was called "Who Am I?" And I was struggling, and the poem was, "I'm reaching out to you. Can you reach down to me? Can you pull me up?" And I was, it didn't use the word God or Jesus, but that's who I was reaching out to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was writing that poem because I'd been standing on top of a building ready to commit suicide. And
Oh, wow.
the cops, the crowd called, and the cops got me down, and I sat, after going to jail, sat in my car and wrote the poem, "Who Am I?" So,
Wow.
but then going through the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and working with another therapist, and going through, I had 21 line papers, 21 pages of line paper, and I just kept writing things down, resentments. My mom didn't believe me. My mom did this. My mom did, dad did that. All
Mm-hmm.
these resentments and things. And I came to this point in meeting with this therapist for 3.5 hours where I just took everything out of the trunk and threw it in front of Jesus and asked for forgiveness. I no longer blamed anybody but myself. I didn't blame, the doctor for diagnosing me with gender dysphoria, or the doc that cut all the body parts. I didn't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it up and just took it on and said, this is mine. You own it. You take it from here. And when I was done with that, the therapist I went to said, "Well, we need to go pray about this." So we went to his office and we started praying. And during that prayer, it took me a while to kind of get connected in the prayer. I was really exhausted after 3.5 hours of therapy and in
All
prayer.
right.
And so all of a sudden I couldn't hear him praying. It just went totally silent. And in my vision, I looked up and there was Jesus looking at me coming down. And he had his arm, he was actually on a trajectory coming down, and he had his arms stretched out. And I looked, he's actually coming for a little baby sitting in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at that baby and I went, that baby's me. He's coming for me as a little baby when I was first born.
Mm-hmm.
And he picked that baby up and held the baby in his arms. And he looked at me straight away and said, "You are now safe with me forever." And he disappeared. And I realized he didn't just, I was 50 years old. He didn't just come at 50. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
struggling for 46 years.
Mm-hmm.
He came to me and redeemed my life from day one
Mm. Yeah,
as a
he had his
baby.
hand on you and brought him to yourself since the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
Wow.
So it took me probably a year to even be able to talk to anybody about it. It seemed so powerful. I
Mm-hmm.
had to process what happened. I didn't even tell the therapist I was working with what happened. I was, what is it, gobsmacked, dumbfounded? I don't even know what word. I was
Mm-hmm.
blown away. I mean,
Yeah.
it was beyond anything that I've ever had or ever will have again. And it was probably about a year later. I was thinking, I had a big decision. I don't remember what that was. And I kept getting this little nudge in my shoulder, and I'm driving down Highway 4 in California. And it dawned on me, that nudge, that little thing I'm getting in my shoulder, it's a Holy Spirit
Mm.
trying to get my attention to tell me
Mhm.
what I needed to do.
Mhm.
And when I made that connection, when I get that nudge, I know the Holy Spirit is right there with me. And it happens. It's been happening ever since. So
Wow. And
that,
what a beautiful picture just of the freedom and the importance of repentance, because this followed your, owning so much of this as your own sin and your own baggage. And, as much as you were abused by other people and you were traumatized, to be able to not only forgive others as Christ forgave you, but also own it as, the things that were also separating you from God, and just be able to lay that at his feet and then experience such redemption is just such a beautiful picture of the gospel and of it, what it looks like to actually become a follower of Christ. That's
yeah.
just an
And
awesome story.
it proved to me that until you let go of things, he's not going to come,
Mhm.
not full force, not hold
Mhm.
you in his arms. I mean, he might come, he might redeem you, but for me, I had to get rid of absolutely everything.
Mhm.
46
Mhm.
years of garbage
Yeah.
that had been
Yeah.
stored up. brokenness and horrible things that had happened, alcoholism, drug addiction. Man, I was going through it. Today, I've got 39 years sober.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So it took.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, let's rewind a little bit again because there's part of your story that we kind of breezed over that I want to make sure I have the details and I'm sure
Sure.
is a significant part. So, okay, so you get the note from your doctor to have these medical interventions or whatever
Yeah.
terminology you're going to use.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, was this something that you immediately pursued? And what did that look like? Was it hormones? Was it surgery? Like what types of things were you pursuing in order to change your identity, quote
Yeah. I had
unquote?
actually been on hormones for about 4 years before I
Oh,
went there.
okay.
And I'd got him secretly, everything I was doing was secret.
Mhm.
My
From
whole
your
life.
wife also? Did she know at the
Yeah.
time that you were on
No.
hormones? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so then I had the official thing. It's like, okay, there's that almost a validation that I was on the right track, right?
Mhm.
Which I wasn't.
Mhm.
So I set the time to go have the surgery during the summer, and I told my wife I was going on a business trip with. I was working for American Honda Motor Company by then, and so I lied to her about where I was going, what I was doing. I'd set it
Okay.
up to go have the surgery. I went to Trinidad, Colorado, paid Dr. Biber $7,000 or $8,000 for the quote surgery, and went to the hospital and signed into the hospital. I remember standing at the desk at summer day and signing in at the desk, and I looked around and I just given the doc the money, and I'm ready to go in the hospital to be prepared for surgery in the morning. And and I turned around and walked out, and I started walking every single street in Trinidad, Colorado. I was going up and down, up and down. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go or what to do.
Mhm.
And I finally went back to his office, said, I want my money back. I'm not going to do this. This is crazy. And so he gave me the money back. And I got on a bus and went back to Denver, Colorado, flew back
Oh,
home.
wow.
And I took the money. And my son at the time was, I don't know, maybe 13, I don't know, young teenager.
Mhm.
And I said, you and I are going to build a car together. And so I took the money I was going to use for surgery and went and bought a Camaro and
Okay.
made it our little project, a little orange Camaro. And I was trying, man, I was trying
Mhm.
to pull my life out of this desperate pit that I was in.
Mhm.
I didn't want things to go south,
Mhm.
and it's painful.
Mhm.
And it's even painful thinking about it today. So I
Mhm.
tried, but I kept collapsing. The evil of that whole
Mhm.
stuff, it's just pure evil. Um,
Mhm.
it's like a cancer, man. It's like a
Yeah.
cancer that just kill you. And so I went back to Dr. Walker, who wrote the WPATH Standards of Care, told him what I've been through, and he said, well, I'll write you another letter of approval for surgery.
So there was no there was no response of, "Oh, maybe this isn't the right course of action for you."
Yeah. No, I got two letters. I didn't get one, I
Wow.
got two. And so that one, I told the wife I was doing it. I went and did it. I
Oh,
became
you
Laura
told her that
Jensen.
time.
Yeah, I did. And
Okay.
so she knew, she said, well, when you're done, don't come home. And I
Wow.
understood that. So that was the beginning of the end of the marriage. And
And that
I
surgery, was it just a castration or a plastic surgery, or what did the like, what was
it
the
was,
the course of care, quote,
yeah,
unquote, that was prescribed
yeah,
for you?
it was the typical vaginoplasty that they do.
Okay.
I had already set up to have implants put in and do all
Mhm.
that stuff,
Mhm.
and I was still working. I hadn't told Honda at the time that I was going through this, and so I was getting a lawyer together to kind of protect myself on the employment side,
Okay.
and started working with the lawyer, and the lawyer kind of bailed on me. And so I went and told Honda, that I was getting my birth record changed to Laura Jensen, female. And I was an executive, man. I was like in the top tier management there. I had been helping develop the Acura division for Honda.
Okay.
No small,
Wow.
no small job, right?
Right, right.
And they came to me, opened my desk up, took all my stuff in it, put it in a box, walked me to the gate, and I was done. I was finished.
Wow.
And from October 25th, 1983, until probably the end of the 1980s or end of 1990s before I ever got a good job again. I didn't have it.
Wow.
I was doing. I had about 100 different jobs. I was
Mhm.
homeless. I lived in a camper shell. I worked doing dishes for a restaurant to get food. I lived at a guy that owned a restaurant. I lived at his house feeding his cat, so I'd have a place to live. I mean, I was on the margins, man. I had 2 years where my income was less than $4,500 a year.
Wow. And did you think during this time, despite this hardship, that you were on the right track, that you were doing the right thing? I mean, was there, I know a lot of people who identify as transgender describe a feeling of euphoria when they cross dress or when they pursue, a medical intervention or something. And as we know, I mean, often that fades and actually is worse for self-harm and suicidal ideation and such. But I mean, did you have that sense of quote unquote euphoria? Did you think
I,
this is it? Like it's hard now, but it's gonna be better.
well, when I was in the hospital and had the surgery, I had that euphoric feeling in the
Okay.
hospital, and I thought, yeah, okay, now this is going to be fine. Everything's
Mhm.
going to be okay.
Mhm.
Um, and and I had a friend that I worked with who she's a dear friend, still a dear friend today, that let me stay. She had a big house. She let me stay in a room there, and she cared for me and for a while until it just became unbearable for her to to see just to see Walt go to Laura. That was puzzling for her, and she tried. And um, so I think I tried. That 7 years. I mean, I worked for FDIC in banking.
Mhm.
I had some good jobs. I worked for the Postal Service.
Okay.
Um, I went to school at that time. I was studying psychology. I took numerous courses on psychology, and I actually got a counseling certificate to become a counselor because I thought I could help people with this issue, not realizing that that was going to help me more than anything. I was going to help myself far more than I was at the time. So, so I was working my way back, and then at church, and I decided that I needed to help more people. So I decided to start the website sexchangeregret.com to find out if I was the only one that went through this and regretted it and had the kind of childhood that I had that may be responsible for what was going on. At that time I knew
Right.
nothing. I just trained in how to execute a good session with somebody and do counseling. So I just started a website. My wife's a geek, so she started the website sexchangeregret.com. The first year I think we had um, about 700 people come to the site, and
Wow.
by March of 2015, which was about 8 years after I got started, I think. I don't remember all those dates, but
Mhm.
by 2015, we were getting 350,000 people a year. I was
Wow.
getting
And that's
20,000 a month.
that's remarkable because when you consider, I mean, how much less of a phenomenon and how much less social contagion there was around this issue at that time. I mean, that is an
Yeah.
astronomical number when you consider how much smaller this was at the time.
Yeah, and I wrote my first article in February 2015 that was published in the Federalist, and it
Okay.
was about protecting kids. And so that started my journey. And then I published them in USA Today, newspapers all over the world, and
Wow.
I've been grateful to be an award-winning author and an award-winning speaker as well
Mhm.
worldwide. And so that is only by the grace of God,
Mhm.
not because I'm any good. Somebody wrote me a note and says, "You have a lot of wisdom." I said, "I have a lot of experience. Wisdom, I think I'm probably a little short on, but."
Well, the
So
Lord's clearly given you quite a lot of it as well. Can you tell me what your personal regret journey looked like? What was the breaking point for you? I mean, were you still identifying as Laura when you had your encounter with the Lord?
yeah,
Or had you already transitioned to Walt or you
well,
don't like that word, not
I
detransition,
w-
but were you
yeah,
going by
I
Walt
was,
again?
yeah, I was probably right in the, I was in the zone. I was going back and forth.
Okay.
I'd lived in days as Laura, days as Walt. That time with the Lord solidified it. But um,
Okay.
yeah, I was working as Laura selling carpet in Monterey, California,
Okay.
and it came to me. I thought, do you really want your identity to be that of a transgender? And
Mm,
that's when I wanted to drop this whole transgender thing. Is
mm,
that your purpose in life? And I realized that that's no purpose at all.
mm,
That is like the most empty thing that you could possibly have, to just be identifying as a transgender. I mean, that is nothing. It's as empty as life can get. There's
mm,
no substance to that. You've
mhm,
destroyed your body, you've destroyed your family, you have a daughter who's not talking to you. You don't have the career you once had, and although you're selling carpet and you're able to make ends meet living in a $600 a month apartment in Monterey, California, this is not a life. And
mhm,
so, and I'm working on my recovery. And so I think this was where I started to connect. I went to a pastor, Jeff Farrar, um, and started going to church. And I think it just took a long time. It took about 2 years for all this stuff to gel out, whether it was, writing the poem and or
mhm,
meeting Jesus. I say that because I don't want people, because I hear this, people say, well, you just pray it away. Well, nobody prays
mhm,
anything away. There's a lot
mhm,
of work. Yeah,
mhm,
prayer is significant and
mhm,
absolutely essential, but don't
mhm.
expect three or four prayers to cut through this. I had probably had, 10,000 prayers before I ever got to where I was. But I think you
Right.
pointed out something earlier. I had to give it all up, right? I mean, I had to take
Mhm.
responsibility. And I think that's when the Lord, he can enter in and begin to guide you down that path of
Yeah,
restoration and redemption.
absolutely. So what did the, for lack of a better word, reversal process look like? Were you able to undo many of the changes that you'd undergone? And I mean, did you just can you stop taking, wrong sex hormones cold turkey, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I had to go through that where they started to do a mix where it was half testosterone, and so this was a process of about 2 years working with an endocrinologist to break
Okay.
this process down. So it was very deliberate, very precise. It wasn't done over the internet, which is nonsense. And
Mhm. Right.
there was no attempt to get any of the body parts reversed, because I'm I believe that um, taking body parts off does not change you into a woman. Putting them back on
Mhm.
is not going to make me a man. I'm a man. I'm a
Mhm.
man
Right.
that was
Right.
mutilated, and
Right.
and what it really did was didn't change my gender. It changed my ability to function. It changed my
Yep.
functionality. It didn't
Yep.
change my gender, and I
Right.
think that's a more honest way of saying what we're doing with these women and with these men is changing their ability to function as they were designed. And so,
Mhm.
um, anytime you take any piece of equipment, I don't care whether it's a microphone or TV or anything, and you start changing its function, it goes, it's becomes worthless. It ends up in the scrap
Mhm.
pile. And
Right.
and so, yeah, I was just, probably the deepest pain that I have is what I did to my wife and my children.
Mm.
I, I, I quite honestly still struggle with forgiving myself for what I did. I know the Lord's forgiven me. I'm,
Mhm.
married for almost 28 years and sober all these years. My life is
Mhm.
fantastic, and I'm
Mhm.
very blessed. But
Mhm.
the harm that was done is why I'm so passionate about making
Mhm.
sure that people don't get hormones. I don't care how old you are, um,
Yeah.
and stop this nonsense. I mean, it's just it makes me weep. I mean, some of these letters I get from people. I'm working with a guy from Mumbai, India, and I get people from all over the world that I work with,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we're making progress, but it's tough,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so the restoration, um, they didn't change me, they hurt me, and they
Mhm.
mutilated me, but they didn't take away my resilience, and they didn't take away
Mhm.
my relationship with Jesus Christ, and they didn't. Um, I'm still here, man. I'm 85.
Mhm.
I'm kicking some booty,
Mhm.
and I'm just getting started. A lot
That's
more.
great.
There's a worship song called "I Was Made for More." I don't know if you've heard that, but it's fantastic. It's kind of my song. It
Okay.
says I'm not made for the grave. I'm made for more. And so
Mm.
I'm going to keep singing that song and keep going.
I love that. I love that. Um, I'm going way over time, and I'm so sorry, but I have a couple more questions if you'll
Sure.
allow me to pick your brain.
Absolutely.
Um, I would love to hear some of your thoughts on therapy because I'm curious what you think about. I've heard you talk a lot about here and elsewhere about trauma therapy versus finding a gender therapist, for instance. That people who are struggling with their identity don't need gender therapy; they need to deal with childhood traumas because that contributes to so many of these issues. But at the same time, I've seen so much of a cultural trend of people basically using trauma as or childhood trauma as a crutch or as an excuse for setting boundaries with their parents and just for familial estrangement and other kinds of very self-absorbed and self-centered behaviors, and people will call things trauma that are really just oh, I was raised in a religious environment, or oh, I was spanked as a child. And I'm not talking about being hit, with a wooden plank. I'm talking about
Yeah.
like normal, faithful parenting. And so I'm curious how you feel about about this culture of, overemphasis of childhood trauma when you have people like you who have experienced real childhood trauma that has dramatically affected your life. Um and also, like, how do we differentiate there, and what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great question. And certainly kids are brilliant, right? And they can use things against parents. And I think what we put, I'll do it again, in the book. In the book, because this was co-written by me and Dr. Jennifer Bowens, a trauma therapist, there is a thing
Mhm.
called little t and big T. And
Mm.
little t can be traumatizing, and I think it's important to understand that sometimes trauma is perceived that never happened.
Mm. Can you give an example?
Yeah, I believe my mom is being mean to me, or I believe they're doing this, or you believe
Mhm.
something, like you believe you're transgender. It's false, but you can
Mhm.
believe
Right.
something that you can say that I'm living in a hurtful environment, and it may not be. But then there's so many different important steps in dealing with somebody who's struggling. It's not all trauma. There's a lot of
Mhm.
internet addiction issues. I mean, we got kids doing furries. We got kids identifying, as some character, a female character on the internet. These are serious addictions, pornography.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
want to make sure that we don't put everything into trauma because it's not. I think there's
Mhm.
simple things such as social contagion, kids joining kids because they want to be in a group, and the kids, it's a group conscience thing, and they'll do that whole "I'm transgender" thing to go along and get along. I've got a network of people, um, so I think anytime we work with somebody that's struggling, and as I do, I keep digging until I find what the little nugget is, and you can work
Mhm.
through talking with somebody. I've worked with people for 3 years. It's not like
Mhm.
just two or three email. I've had some I've been able to resolve in 3 emails, but sometimes it
Mhm.
takes a long time. So I
Mhm.
think if somebody's pulling the wool over your eyes, you got to be careful with that too, because they can use
Mhm.
these things to manipulate people and
Right.
people. And I think there's another issue that is there's kids today want labels. They want
Mm.
to have a label. This is
Yep.
why I want to be a detransitioner. Well, you're not. Well, but I want to be a detran. I want this identity. That's why they have all these different gender identities. They want a label. They want to attach to something. There's only two
Mhm.
genders, male and female, but they
Mm.
want something else. So they invent it.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
I think I was going to actually go out on the stage sometime and just have a coat one with all these labels on it and then start peeling them off and reading them and going, we need to throw
Mm.
all this stuff away. There's only one label you need to wear, and that's your identity is in Christ, and your
Mhm.
function is the way God designed you, and to live up to that, and not let anybody deter you. And
That's
I
right.
feel I feel the need to once again say, keep in mind the gender stuff is only for the purpose of destroying you.
Mhm. Mhm. That's
Devalue,
right.
dehumanize, and destroy. That's anytime we think about this whole gender clinic thing. Remember, they aren't there with the Bible reading scripture to you. They're there to
Mhm.
take your
Mhm.
genitals off and make sure that your breasts are cut off. Make sure that you can never function as God designed you. That
Mhm.
is a poke in the eye to the Lord Jesus Christ, and it destroys your ability to function for the rest of your life
Mhm.
as you were
And it
designed to
makes you a
function.
patient for life. Makes you a patient
Exactly.
for life. It lines their pockets for life. It guarantees that you will need to continue to see them and get quote unquote care for the rest of your life. And it's not caring. It's evil.
So
It's demonic. It's yeah,
absolutely
it's awful.
destructive, destroys people.
Yeah.
So I just think that in working with people, I've learned there's so many ways to navigate this, and I never put it all in a trauma box. I don't put it all in the
Mhm.
internet box. I don't put it all in the social contagion, because I've gone to a doctor's house who struggled with one of his kids and sat down, and you could just see the dynamic in the room. The father was very
Mhm.
domineering, and the
Mm.
son was scared to death of his dad, and
Mhm.
um, and he was starting to identify as a female. And then my wife went with the mother, and then we got together and talked about it, and the daughter was getting all the attention,
Mm.
and he decided that if I identified as a female, I would get the level of attention my daughter's getting. This
Right.
is so common. I've actually read stories in UK where a daughter will commit suicide because the boys are getting the attention that she's not getting and she can't get.
Mm.
And one of them, she even changed genders to become a boy to try to get,
Mhm.
said she changed genders. She didn't, but
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
cost her life.
Yeah.
You see, because,
Yeah, it's just
and,
heartbreaking.
and we talked about that. My mom never told me she loved me. So,
Mhm.
so did Walt ever get the love? I mean, maybe we pointed out something where a guy says, "You just go take care of your dad, and
Mhm.
I'll take care of
Mhm.
this." I mean, maybe that was kind of the you glimmer, you
Mhm.
know. And so,
Mhm.
um, it's just I think we have to be really careful um, about when we work with people and understand they don't have gender dysphoria. They have
Mhm.
dysphoria. I'll go with that. They don't have gender
Mhm.
dysphoria because there's a thing called
Yep.
generalized dysphoria.
Mm.
It's clinical. You can look it up. Generalized dysphoria is
Mhm.
right there. And
Mhm.
so it can be but if you talk about generalized dysphoria, you can't give somebody hormones and cut body parts off, can you?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And
What it oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say when you have everyone, every single person without exception is diagnosed with gender dysphoria. You know it's bogus.
Mhm.
It
Right.
it's categorically impossible
Right.
to diagnose everybody
Right.
with gender dysphoria because it that makes the whole thing just a fraud. It's the biggest
Right.
medical fraud of my lifetime. This whole thing is
Mhm.
bogus. It's plastic bananas and it ruins people's lives. Nobody should be doing it.
Mhm.
I want to sit in front of the
Right.
president of the United States and say, you get this stopped today.
Mhm.
I don't
Right.
think he understands it.
Right. I think there are very few people in positions to do much about this who understand the gravity of the situation.
I agree.
What advice do you have for people who maybe are struggling with this and are looking for a therapist who's going to lead them in truth and not just write them a prescription for hormones and uh, a care plan, quote unquote, that involves them going in for surgery? How do you know how to find the right therapist who shares a worldview that's based on truth and who's actually going to counsel you into alignment with what is true and good and beautiful and not just make you, put you in the patient for life pipeline?
We go
How do
into
you
great
guide
deep.
people toward good
Yeah,
therapists?
we go into great detail in that book, Embracing God's Design,
Okay.
about how to do that. But I'll give you the kind of the overview. You need to interview a
Okay.
therapist, and
Mm.
if they are a gender affirming care therapist, run the other way.
Mhm.
If they're a therapist who is looking to diagnose something, like if you go in and meet a therapist and say, well, let's first test you on the trauma scale. Let's see if there's anything there. Let's look, somebody who's actually looking somewhere else. You want someone who isn't buying into the gender thing.
Mhm. Which
And
gender affirming care is another great example of a euphemism that doesn't mean anything like the word says. It's not affirming of your actual gender or your sex, and it's certainly not caring. So that's another way they get you.
yeah, isn't it true? If they were doing gender affirming
Mhm.
care, they would never give them hormones and then never do surgery.
Right, exactly.
Isn't that right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's like they flip
Mhm.
all this stuff upside down.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. So, Walt, before I let you go, you've been running this nonprofit. Is it still called Sex Change Regret? Is that where people can find
Well,
you if they have questions?
I because it got so big and there were so many things, and I was up working, answering emails 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and
I believe
because
it.
I'm the only one here. I contacted Lucas Miles at Influence Church in Granger, Indiana. Lucas is part of Turning Point USA. He's on the pastor side of that, and I trained people at his church to take over sexchangeregret.com. So
Okay.
now what I have is waltheyer.com. That has that's where I live today, and there's a lot more people that go to sexchangeregret.com. But I'm working to speak to more churches and to have more
Mm.
conversations like this, which I think are essential in helping. I've tried to start a podcast. I've done a few. Uh, I'm not great at starting things like that. My wife is, but so it's waltheyer.com. I'm still here. I think the most important thing for me to do next year is get out and talk and try to really get people to um, start waning away from transgender runner, transgender. What the Air Force? The Air Force got 17
Mhm.
transgender. They're not. They're men and women.
Identifying. Yes. Yes.
So
Yep.
I'm trainable. I'm not stuck on it. It's just I'm stuck on not calling them transgender. I'm stuck on not saying they transitioned or detransitioned, and
Right.
I'm stuck on um, the fact that it's not about gender. And I'm stuck on the fact that your gender was not assigned at birth. By the way, it was innate and fixed when at conception.
Yes.
Sorry, you can't fix it.
Yes. 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 What can you just share maybe one of the most miraculous or impactful stories that you have seen
Yeah,
over your many years of work in this, with somebody who's contacted you or that you've gotten to meet? Or, I mean, I'm sure there are
yeah,
way too many to count, but can you just share one to maybe give some hope to somebody who is struggling and just, for people who are maybe watching a loved one
yeah.
struggle with this or pursue a path that is contrary to God's design? Like, I'm sure they would love to hear a story of hope and change.
Yeah, well, I was. This is how long ago I was watching Tucker Carlson on Fox. I don't know how long he's been
Okay.
off the air, but it's that long ago. And I was in my office, which is my reclining chair. I don't have an office, and I was working on my
It's a good
computer, and
office setup.
Yeah. So I got an email from a guy who says, I'm 73 years old. I transitioned when I was 13. I have a gender therapist. Um, I transitioned. I'm transgender. I have a gender therapist. I was looking at your website, sexchangeregret.com. That's when I had it back then.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to know what you think about my situation. I'm going, I haven't even heard anything except you just said that you transitioned and you had a gender therapist. So I sat there and looked at that and go, why is a guy looking at sexchangeregret.com?
Mhm.
A little clue.
Mhm.
So I wrote him back and I politely said, well, and I said this earlier because I loved this when I did this. I said, well, your therapist is a quack. You're not a transgender. You've never transitioned and you don't have gender dysphoria. If you work with me, we're going to find out what really happened. Would you like to do that? You just contact me and we'll work on it. So I turned to my wife and I said, well, I sent that one and we'll see what happens. And he wrote back the next day and said, well, that's kind of curious what you had to say. What is it that you want to know about me? And I said, well, you said you transitioned at 13. All I want to know is what was your home environment like? What was your life like? What was
Mhm.
what was happening when you were 13 years old? Just tell me, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, uncle, aunt, whatever. And so
Mhm.
he wrote back and he says, well, my mom was a raging alcoholic and she would get a butcher knife about 3 times a week and chase my dad around the house trying to murder him.
Oh my goodness.
And so I got a little smile on my face and I wrote him back and said, well, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, but I think you may have suffered from some trauma. And maybe, and I said, the next time you go back to your wacko gender therapist, um, tell him that Walt Heyer told you that you need a trauma therapist. And don't wear your little red pumps. Don't dress up like a girl. Go as a guy and go for therapy like you normally would. And so
Mm.
I didn't hear from him for a couple of days. And I thought, telling a therapist, Walt Heyer told me to tell you this. I thought that would just make their head explode. And so he
Mhm.
wrote back and he says, well, I went in and told my gender therapist I needed a trauma therapist. And Walt Heyer told me, in fact, I needed a trauma therapist. And my trauma therapist turned around and said, well, isn't that interesting? She says, I'm also a trauma therapist.
Okay.
You're in luck. I'm going to find out if Mr. Heyer is right. I'm going to test you on the trauma scale. And so instead of the
Which
usual, there's a
why
test.
on earth is a trauma therapist and also a gender therapist not starting with trauma? There's a red flag, but sorry,
Yeah.
continue.
You think
Mhm.
it's all about the money, baby. So
Yep,
this
exactly.
is why this one really was so interesting to me. So she tested him on the trauma scale and he came out 7 out of 10, which is extraordinarily high. And he talked in terms in his email to me about how wonderful therapy was with his therapist. Anybody who's ever been in therapy is not wonderful if you're getting any
Mhm.
work done. It's terrible. And so the next one he
Mhm.
came back, he said it was the worst session I ever had. It was terrible. It was painful. I had it. It went on and on. He said she gave me it's a 2 hour session. I had EMDR therapy, and I'm not an advocate. I'm not speaking out. It's just this is a case of what happened. And so, and he says, Walt, guess what? I'm free. One session with somebody who is a
Wow.
gender therapist who used the skills as a trauma therapist to treat him, and he was free. And so I wrote him back and said, I doubt it. I'm not buying it.
Mhm.
I said,
Mhm.
I'm going to write you back in a few days. So I wrote him back in a week and I said, hey, how you doing? He said, I'm free. I'm done. And I go, So I wrote him back 4 weeks in a row. And on,
Okay.
and on the fourth one, I said, I want to write a story and publish it in the Federalist about your story. And he went berserk. He said, I am so angry about being mistreated for so long and destroying my life this way. I don't want
Mhm.
anybody to know. I don't even want to talk about it. And I don't ever want you
Mhm.
contacting me again. He was upset. And
Okay.
rightfully so. He said, this and that something. He said, I can celebrate the fact that I'm off the hook, but I can't celebrate the fact that 60 years of my life went down the drain.
Right. Right.
That's what he was dealing with.
Right.
and I'm trying to,
Right.
and I was trying to benefit from the loss of his 60 years of life by writing an article, and he saw me
Mm,
as kind of an enemy at that point. And I
right.
get that, and it was
Hmm.
insensitive for me to do that, but I thought it was so interesting. So that one, and that all happened within from the time that I got his email until the time he was free was 4 days
Wow.
after
That
60 years.
is truly remarkable. I'm sure she didn't, but I hope that therapist found a new line of work after misleading a client for 60 years. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
$220 a week for just sitting there making happy.
Mhm. Mhm. But also how encouraging that, it truly is never too late to be free from the lies that have you in bondage. And that's really
Amen.
just a beautiful story of coming out of that. So,
Amen. And the
um,
people I've worked with for 20 years, I want to say that, and people who reach out to me, I've never asked for money. I've never asked for donations. I've never asked people to buy books. I've been doing this because of the pain that I've suffered. I don't want people to go through that.
mhm,
If you struggle, I want it to end quickly, and I want you to get the help you need and find the
mhm,
right person to do it. I'm not. I don't do the therapy. I just guide you to
mhm.
the kind of help you see the kind of therapy that is going to help you. And certainly in every case, you need the Lord Jesus Christ to be there alongside you to bring good healing and redemption and restoration.
That's right. And that work is clearly resonating with people as evidenced by the thousands upon thousands who have reached out and found you and found freedom and found Christ and just yeah, from that life that is just so destructive. Walt, this is the last thing, and then I'm going to let you go. If anyone is listening to this who might be struggling with this right now, who's trying to figure out where to turn, or has maybe been dealing with this for years, or is maybe just fell down a internet rabbit hole and is confused. Um, what is one thing, one piece of advice, one piece of wisdom? What would you say to a person
Yeah.
who might be listening and is in that boat right now?
Get that book and read it.
Yeah.
Embracing God's Design. Read it. Don't just use it as a doorstop.
Hmm.
Read it. It is absolutely chock full. It's not just a book to read and enjoy. This is a book that deals with how you need to navigate these things. It's for parents who have a child who's struggling. It's for the individual who's struggling. It's for pastors. It was guided toward pastors and churches so that they could. We even have small group study thing on the website. It's called embracethedesign.com. Go to embracethedesign.com. These give you the tools. This is a toolbox that you can get and use. And if you still have questions or anything, you can certainly write me. I'll be happy to answer you. And so I think this was just published in May, and
Okay.
Joy Pullman did a fantastic article on it.
Awesome. Awesome. Walt, thank you so much for all of your time today. I took way more of it than I intended to, but it was truly a pleasure to hear your story and to talk with you. And like he said, everybody go read Embracing God's Design. Go to embracegodsdesign.com. Find Walt at
Embrace the
waltheyer.com.
embracethedesign.com. Embrace,
Thedesign.com. Sorry about that.
yeah, critical. Yeah,
I'm
so
leading the listeners astray. I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
you
Listen, it was a
you could also
thrill and a pleasure for me to be on. Can't tell you how much I enjoyed this.
Oh, wonderful. It was so great for me too. Truly, the pleasure was all mine. So thanks so much, Walt, and everybody go find him online. And also, you can read more of his work at the Federalist. There's plenty of it there. So thanks
Yeah,
so much, Walt. I hope to have you back again.
you bet. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Kylee Cast. Once again, if you have not done so before, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the specific Kylee Cast channel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you haven't yet, next time, check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. And of course, go check out Walt Heyer's website at waltheyer.com and read his new book, Embracing God's Design. I will be right back here next week with more. So until then, just remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill you.